All right, in this little exercise, you're going to see something that I do with students sometimes when we have remote sessions. It's a way to use ForeFlight on the web to really kind of deepen your understanding of weather. And what we're going to do is start by, on the imagery tab, sort of guessing at what we think the weather conditions will be around the country, and then we're going to use the maps and the overlays to either verify or find out what the actual weather conditions are. Check it out, this is how it works. All right, we're going to play a little game here. This is a weather workshop. I'm going to show you a way that you can use ForeFlight to help yourself understand the weather. And I do this with students a lot. Here we're just going to look at the current surface analysis chart. And based on this chart, we're going to try to guess what the weather is in different parts of the country, where we might experience precipitation, where the winds are strong, and that kind of thing. So we're going to sort of guess at it, and then use the map to prove what we guess. So a couple things seem pretty obvious here. Let's review. Like here we've got this cold front coming out of the Pacific Northwest. We've also got a cold front here coming off the Gulf of Mexico. So remember, when it comes to storms, that let's see if I can zoom in on this a little bit. Well, when it comes to storms, low pressure is the potential for the storm to occur, right? If you have high pressure, like you do here in the middle part of the United States, the air is relatively stable in a vertical way, vertically stable. If the air has low pressure, it's vertically unstable, which means things that get lifted into it tend to continue to rise. All right, so low pressure I think of as the potential for a storm to occur. Water is the fuel for a storm. So if you look at a place like, up here in Canada, we can't quite see it, but this looks like a low pressure system up here. There may or may not be a lot of water around. You've got the Great Lakes, but it's not like you're right over an ocean, like right up here in BC. That's not near an ocean. So we'll hold that thought for a minute. But the obvious ones are this cold front here, this low pressure counterclockwise rotation, pulling water in off the Pacific Ocean in the Northwest. And the same here, the low pressure spinning this way, pulling in water off the Gulf of Mexico. Water is the fuel. All you need now is the third ingredient to have a storm, some lifting force. Lifting can only happen in three ways. It's either orographic, that is, it's lifting that happens as a result of terrain pushing air upward. Convective, lifting that happens as a result of the heating up of the Earth's surface, or frontal, like this. This cold front acts as an upside down snow shovel type effect where the cold air hugs the ground and pushes the warm air up in front of it. So I can almost promise that here in front of this cold front, we have a squall line. I'm going to predict precipitation in a large band, quite a lot of precipitation right here in the Pacific Northwest, because we've got this cold front that's acting like an upside down snow shovel. It is the ignition. We've got water coming in with this counterclockwise rotation off the ocean. So that's the fuel. And we've got low pressure ahead of all that. So as this fuel, this water gets lifted up into the atmosphere, it tends to continue to rise. And then it cools down, it condenses, it releases more heat, it rises more, it cools down, it condenses, releases more heat. And that is the buildup phenomenon. And so this low pressure system is not particularly deep at 1007. It's not as deep as some of them get, but it's deep enough to have some instability. There's probably a lot of water in this system, so we're predicting rain here along the Pacific Northwest. And the same thing down here in the southeast. Warm air coming off the Gulf of Mexico, full of water. A cold front pushing all of that up, acting like an upside down snow shovel, and low pressure in front of all of it. I'm predicting large bands of rain pretty much all the way up the East Coast here, maybe to about here. I wish I knew what state that was. Anyway, not quite to New York. That's where I'm going to predict that ending. This one's a little trickier to figure out. This stationary front up the middle of the country here. The air pressure is relatively high. It's high pressure. I'm predicting some precipitation, but minimal. Obviously, we've got no precipitation here where the pressure is high. And and this elongated trough of low pressure here that goes up to British Columbia. I'm going to say that because of all this flow off the ocean and all of the mountains in this area, so we get that orographic lifting, that this whole area is just covered with precipitation. And now what we'll do is go to the maps page and sort of see if we're accurate, see if that was right. Okay, y'all remember what we said? So let's turn it on. Let's hold it in suspense for a minute here. Let's try flight category first, see if we can see. Well, it's VFR up there in the Pacific Northwest, so we'll see. Definitely down here in the southeast and up through the center part of the country, we are seeing low clouds. All right, let's go ahead and find out. Put the radar on. There you go. That's what's really happening. So I think I overestimated the amount of precipitation up here. We certainly do have this build up, this precipitation, but I predicted it went all the way into British Columbia here. It doesn't look like that's the case. Here in the southeast, it is pretty much like we described. We can animate it if you want to see this effect. Let's just watch it happen. Air coming in off the ocean, getting lifted, and turning into a storm. 3 ingredients. Low pressure is the potential. The cold front in this case was the lifting force, and the water was the fuel. All right, another cool thing before we stop this little weather workshop is that you can do in ForeFlight here is, especially on the web, it's a bit harder to do in the app, but you can come here to the prog charts, get to the surface analysis, and just sort of next advance it rather rapidly. So you can kind of see an animated effect and watch how the weather patterns are moving. Now these are forecasts, but this is what the weather people think they're gonna see here. So kind of interesting, right? All right. Thanks for joining me in this little weather workshop. Kind of a fun way to use ForeFlight, so I hope you got something out of that.